I'm hitting recording. So today what I hope to do is go over a few of the common questions that we've received, and to answer those questions I will go into eSnaps when appropriate and show you how to answer those questions, and then also when appropriate I'll look at our materials that we have available on our website to show you what you need to do to either answer the question properly or submit the correct information, because we have had questions about what applicants should submit. So before I get started though, let me just make sure everyone knows that they can ask questions throughout this process. I do have everyone on mute because we get a lot of feedback, but I am pulling out the question bar, so I will see your questions if you write a question in, or I'll see if you have raised your hand, if you know how to do that on your GoToMeeting app that should be on your screen. So feel free to stop me and ask questions throughout this. I will routinely unmute people so they can ask a question. I would rather you just ask it through your microphone if possible, but write in your question if you feel more comfortable doing that, or just simply write in to the question bar that you need to talk, so unmute you. So what I want to start with is looking at the materials we have online. We've sent a few emails about this, but we have some really good materials online, and you can find them at this web address. I'll send that out again after this webinar. But if you click on Texas Balance of State CoC grant materials, you'll have a drop-down list, and it has all of the useful materials for this year's grant application process, as the RFP, which includes that all-important deadline and timeline. Then you have the renewal project evaluation process and the application for new projects form. You have a recording of the training that we did September 25th. And then there are links to some of the materials that HUD makes available, as well as some of the materials that we've made available, like the logs forms that we're asking you to report that data using. So let me just go ahead and get into the questions. Oh yeah, one more thing before I get into these questions I've received so far. We'll do our best to answer your questions today, and we'll have a lot of the answers, but I will not guarantee that we will have every answer. And I will say that you do need to rely on HUD ultimately for your the ultimate guidance. So please do check the HUD regs if there are any questions at all. If there's something that we're a little unsure of today, we'll inform you to check the HUD regulations, but we'll also follow up and research it and try to find that answer for you. Another thing I should mention is that after today, I'm actually out of the office until the end of our annual conference, which is occurring next week. So I will not be back in the office until October 19th. So I'm sorry about that, but I have my brother's wedding and then the conference coming up. So it's just a really busy time, and the timing doesn't work out really well with the CoC grant. So if you do need help within the next few days, you will need to contact Mary Dodson or Caitlin Bear, and start with Mary. And always use the materials we have online. I think they're really good, and I think the materials HUD has is really good. Okay, so let me get into these questions. Now I'm going to go over a few of these questions, but then I want you all to piggyback on these and ask questions that might come up because of one of these questions, or after we've gone through each one of these, ask the questions that are on this FAQ list that I've started to develop. Okay. Sorry, I just need a little bit of coffee. Okay. Now these are questions that I received from people, so I've just copied them from the email that I received and pasted them in. So they might read a little odd, but I thought this was probably the easiest way to handle this. So the first question comes from someone in Northeast Texas. She says, I know that one of the issues she was running into is the fact that I believe it's either question 5 or question 6 that ask for how many people are in the program at a specific point in time. Oh yes, I remember this question. So this question is referring to the section that asks for the point in time information. And I think there's another question about that here. It must be 5B. Project participants. So let's go to eSnaps and let's look at that. And I will use Sabine Valley Center as, actually, you know what? I'll use my sample as our sample. And please be patient with me as eSnaps works. If I remember right, this table, it asks for your data on a point in time. It does not indicate what date that point in time date should be. So if it is like last year's, then you would just choose a point in time. So a typical day in your program, what would that look like? But we will take a look at it and see. And you know, I'm a fan of doing many things at once if possible, so if you want, you can start typing in your questions and stacking them up so we can get to them and go through them quickly as this eSnap spins around. Okay. So we will go into the Sampleville transitional housing project that I have set up. I'm sure you all have been frustrated with this, the slowness of eSnaps. What I've found is that once you get into the folder, then eSnaps moves a little faster. So we are now in the folder now. I'm going to make this bigger so you can see. Okay, that might be a little big. Okay. So her question was about 5B. And remember, as you're navigating eSnaps, to make it easier, if you want to, you can just go and click on the section you want over here on the left. You can see my cursor there. Obviously, if you want to, you can just click next or back to navigate through the pages, but you'll do one page at a time. We know her question was about 5B subpopulations, so I'm going straight there. Okay, yes, so this is asking for the people in the different types of households that are in your project and the makeup of those people. So what they're trying to do, well, let me stop here and just look at the instructions. You can see that the numbers here are intended to reflect a single point in time at maximum capacity and not the number served over the course of the year or grant term. Okay, so the single point in time in this case is, as I suspected, it is a typical point in time. So you could either use that or you could use something like, you could use like last January 15th or something like that. Some number that indicates or reflects what your population, your service population would look like at a point in time at its maximum capacity. So that is, so there's not a certain date that you use. Does anyone have any questions about that? What I would just pick is, when people refer to at a single point in time, typically what they're referring to is typically at a single point in time, my project or my program participants, they look like this. There are 5 that are adults over the age of 24 that are chronic substance abusers, and I don't know why this is not letting me type in. Oh. Let me go back and check. Oh, I think you must have to type this in first. Let's see. Type in households. Let me say 10. Some of these pages do rely on pages before them being filled out. Let's see if that was the case here. Yes. Okay. So apparently you do need to fill out 5A before you fill out 5B. But as far as a point in time, you pick the point in time, or you just use a typical point in time, which is what I would really do, a typical point in time. So here's a question from Dell Ferris. Shouldn't the total number, this question was typed in, sorry. Shouldn't the total number in 5B, what is used in the budget part, we enter 20 people times the HUD entered fair market rent times 12 months. So shouldn't 5B be the total of that? Yes. So what he's saying is that when you are estimating how many people you will house and how much funding that it will take to house that number of people, that's the number that you use. So whenever you're doing that, when you're estimating what the total, say, leasing cost or rental assistance cost is, depending on what your project is, you have to estimate what it would cost if you were full, you were at your maximum limit each day. And that maximum limit, say in this case it's 5 households with 10 total people, that would be your maximum limit. So in that case, for this table, let me get my highlighter out. For this table, you would make sure that it included 5 households and 10 people. So yes, he is correct on that. Any questions about that? Any other questions about that? Now this table, it has been confusing to people in the past, and one of the things you need to know about these types of tables when they're asking for the subpopulations is that these are designations, or these are ways to describe a client, or aspects of a client that I should back up, that one client can have more than one. So one client could fall into the chronic substance abuse category, the person with HIV/AIDS category, severely mentally ill category, and so on. So these numbers don't add up across to what your total number is. It could be that, for example, every person over age 24 in your program is a chronic substance abuser, and every person in your program over age 24 does have a developmental disability. That's very possible. So when you're filling that out, just keep that in mind. Also, one little thing that you'll find in eSnaps, especially with these tables, is that you have to fill out every slot. So if you're getting this red font, these red warnings, most likely that means that you haven't entered 0 when you should have entered 0. So you have to fill out every slot. So even if it doesn't apply to you, you fill it out. Okay. All right, so give me feedback. That's why I know whether or not you have questions about this or if I'm being understandable. So I will move on to the next question. And I have had this question from a few people. And it's about the grant number or the grant identifier. So this is the grant number I entered on question 5. Or I'm going to actually enter in question 5B under section 1A. Am I correct? As this is the federal award identifier. So let me go to that section. So under 1A, and hopefully most of you have gotten through this part here. But this number, this is real easy because this number will be the one that's on your grant inventory worksheet. I've sent this grant inventory worksheet out to you several times, but let me show you what it looks like. And if you need it, we can make it available to you. Let me pull that up. Sometimes if you're a renewal applicant, then this could be a little bit more confusing because you would have populated some of your information over from last year. And one of those things that populates over from last year is your federal award identifier. So for some of you, whenever you open this up, you may see a number already. And you may think, well, then it's done. Well, no, you need to update it with the number that's on this form. And we're looking for this number. And I know it's probably really small on your screen, but if you need, I can send that out. And it has been sent out before, so you might have it in your old email. Look for either GIW, if you're searching for it in your email, or TX-607. That's probably the easiest way to find it. So you enter the number that is listed on your grant inventory worksheet. If you're a renewal applicant, the number that's most likely entered on there, which would look something like that, it's most likely the number from last year. But just check it. And if you do like me, just look at it and then write it down as you go to make sure that every number is correct and every letter is correct, because that is the code that HUD uses for your grant. Okay. So we actually answered this question already. This is the same as this question, and that was the question about the point in time. If we get through all these questions, we don't have a whole lot of questions. Afterwards, I will actually attempt to go through there and complete a sample 5B for you. Okay, so 3B, coordinated entry. Is that a yes or no? And what do we say in the explanation box? So this is a question I've received from a lot of people, and I'm sure that a lot of you on this call have this question too. So let's go to 3B. So like a lot of pages in eSnaps, this page, as you fill it out, you need to hit save. Not save and back or not save and next. You just need to hit save because there will be other windows that pop up. And you'll see that if you hit the instructions. Again, use the instructions throughout eSnaps. Just go through, first thing you do, click show for instructions. And if you're like me, the easiest way to read it is just copy it and then paste it into a Word document. And it just makes it a lot easier to read. And then sometimes I'll even paste the windows into Word. So I can do all my work in Word, and then I can transfer it to eSnaps. So sometimes I'll do that and just make the font bigger, because I'm starting to get old and my eyes aren't as good, so it's easier for me to read on the bigger font. So anyway, you write your description in here. And then you answer these questions, and after you do that, you hit save. So the coordinated entry process, if you don't know whether you participated in it or not, then you probably don't. So coordinated entry is the term that HUD uses for what we call in the balance of state coordinated access. And that is something that our CoC is rolling out to as many communities as possible. The problem is, in the balance of state, we have several communities. So we've rolled out to about 9 communities already, but we have about 25, maybe even more, depending on how you define community, in which we need to roll out to. So we're getting there, but not every community has what we call coordinated access, and what HUD refers to as coordinated entry yet. So if you say yes, I'm just going to hit that just so you can see this, and you hit save. I'm sorry, it probably is the page that follows. Okay. Okay, yes, no, if you say no, then something pops up. If you say yes, then everything's good. So if you say no, which, let me just look in here at who's joining us. So if you're in Denton, you'll say yes. If you're in Mount Pleasant, you'll say no. If you are in Beaumont, you'll say no. Let's see what other communities are represented. If you are in Laredo, you'll say no right now. Texarkana, yes. Some of those folks, I'm not going to be able to get where you're from. If you're from Cameron County, it's no. Okay, I'm not going to be able to go through all these, but many of you, it's no. If you were in, okay, let me see if I can name them. The communities that we have done coordinated access with so far are Texarkana, Corpus Christi, Denton. Those were the first 3. Then we've rolled out to, I actually said Cameron County, no, but I'm sorry, that's not true. Harlingen, Brownsville, Lubbock, and Mary might jump on and correct me if I get any of these wrong. Tyler.
That's it.
That's it. Oh, okay. Okay. So it's 7. It's not.
Yes.
It's not 9 like I said before.
7.
So let me go through that again. Okay. If you're in the cities of Texarkana, Corpus Christi, Denton, Harlingen, Brownsville, Lubbock, or Tyler, then you say yes to this question. You would say yes here. And then you would hit save, and you wouldn't have anything to explain. Now, probably most of you on the call would hit no, and you'll hit save, and then what will you say? So what I've told people to say is that what I just said earlier, that our CoC is currently rolling out, and use their term, use HUD's terms. Our CoC is currently rolling out coordinated entry to all of its communities. Thus far, 7 out of approximately 25 communities have been, coordinated entry has been implemented in. Our CoC has told us that they expect we will implement coordinated entry in our community over the course of the year. And that's what we would hope to do. I can't guarantee that since there are so many communities, but that's what we would hope to do. So we'll write something up and send that to you as a sample. But the answer is no for a lot of you, unfortunately. Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, Eric, I want to jump in there and just let everyone know it's not like HUD isn't aware that in balance of state communities or continuums of care, it's really a lot more challenging to implement coordinated access or coordinated entry. For example, if there's a CoC that's 1 or 2 counties large, then they can implement it in a much easier way than we can over about, 35 communities. So we're addressing it one by one. It just is taking us a lot longer, but we've already done 7, gotten implementation going in 7, whereas in some COCs they only have to do 1. So obviously they're further down the road, but HUD is aware, and so if you put no right now, again, it's not like we haven't let HUD know the situation that we're in and that you all, as part of Balanced State COC, are in.
Took that opportunity to start typing it up. And yes, Mary is right. They're very aware. In fact, we've met with the director of SNAPS, which is Special Needs Assistance Programs, about this very thing. So they are very aware. So they're not going to be surprised if several of our projects pick no to this. So again, we will give you some wording for this. It'll look something like this. I'll just finish it here. Okay. And I will send that to everyone. I mean, you can use those exact words or you can use your own. And then, of course, you answer number 3. Well, according to what your project is, if you have a specific population focus, which a lot of you do. And if you do, you would say yes, of course. Okay, any questions about that particular issue? One thing that's not really a big deal, but it might come up, if you are working in Word, say you did follow my advice and you copied and pasted everything into Word, keep in mind that a lot of these windows, they have character limits. So, and oftentimes they're 1,000 or 2,000 characters. So before you start writing this long thesis about where you describe your project, maybe you should paste it in into this window and hit save and see if it's going to accept more than just a couple of paragraphs, which most of the time it won't. The system's really designed, eSNAPS is really designed to collect primarily quantitative data right now. Okay, let's see. Pull over the questions. Okay, then when we get to, oh yeah, on this, if it is already pre-populated with a lot of gibberish, then if you hit no and hit save, that box will go away, so you won't have to worry about that. If you're worried about it, you can go in and just delete it and hit save before you change it to no, but it shouldn't matter. Okay, SOAR training, is that a yes or no? So that's on 4A. And I think this is a lot like coordinated entry or coordinated access, as we call it. If you don't know what SOAR is, then you probably haven't been trained in it. Excuse me. Okay, that is down. Let's see. Okay. You know what? Let me just start at the beginning here. Always whenever you're filling out these pages, look at your instructions. And I'm going to be the bad student, and I'm just going to go down and start filling it out. But please read through the instructions yourself before you start filling everything out. So you want to make sure to answer whether or not your project policies and practices are consistent with laws relating to providing education services to individuals and families, and I hope everyone says yes to that. You need to make sure that you have a designated staff to ensure that children are enrolled in school and receive these educational services. I'll say yes. Okay, so whenever you get down to number 2, and I will get to the actual question in a second. When you get down to number 2, there are a lot of questions that come up about this. So what you're doing here is for all the supportive services that you make available to your participants in your program, you need to indicate who will provide them and how they'll be accessed and how often. What's the frequency of this service? All too often, when applicants are putting together their proposals, they just think about what they're going to provide, and that's it. You need to think about what others in the community will provide for your clients. And you really should be partnering with other communities in your community on these projects, because you really need that community approach to make this work for your client. And you just need, for the purposes of this grant, you need to show that you have that collaboration, because later on you need to show that you have match and leverage funds that are going to this project, and a lot of those match and leverage funds will come from your partners. For example, you're a transitional housing program, and your expertise is working on that, running that program, having case managers on site to help people work on their individual work plans and get out of homelessness. You don't have someone who's there to provide mental health counseling or substance abuse counseling, but a lot of your clients may need that. So what you would do is you would sign an agreement with the agency or agencies in your community who do provide that. And you sign that agreement for X number of clients per year at X number of hours per year at X rate. And that becomes what your match is. That'll also help you determine how frequently you'll provide services to these folks. So most of you will have someone on site to assess service needs. So that could be daily, weekly, depending on what your project is. Assistance with moving cost. Some of you may work with a local ministerial alliance on a program that helps move people out of your program and into permanent housing. So that could be a partner, and that would be as needed or something like that. So just go through the list and think about how you can provide this. And I would say try to provide as much of these supportive services that are listed as possible, and then think about who will do that. And if you haven't thought this through yet, this would be a way for you to think through who could be your partner on this, partner or partners on this project. So any questions about that? That does seem to come up every year. A lot of times people will turn this in and they'll leave certain supportive services blank, and they really shouldn't be, because there are people in their community that could provide that. Now, in some cases, if they're not working with children at all, there would be no need for childcare, of course. But most of these services could and probably should be provided. So, as always, after you save a few things, after you change a few things, hit save. Then you go through and you answer the rest of the questions as best you can. So we'll say that we are going to provide transportation to our clients. We're going to say that we don't have a single form for 4 or more mainstream programs. There are application forms that will assess clients for more than one program at a time. If you use one of those, please indicate you do. I'm hoping that your case managers do this, at least annually, follow up with participants to ensure mainstream benefits are received or renewed. That's actually one of the things that's one of the objectives of HUD, and that's one of the things we actually look at when we're scoring your applications for prioritization. And then if you hit, I think if you hit, let me see, I think if you hit yes to number 4, then 4A pops up, but let me make sure of that. Yes. So you answer whether or not your participants have access to SSI, SSDI, technical assistance, and you all have access because you have access through Texas Homeless Network. So you would hit yes. And then it asks, do you have staff people? Oh, no, it's asking about us. Okay, so what this is asking, 4A is asking, has the staff person, and what they're saying with this, has the staff person at Texas Homeless Network provided technical assistance in SOAR training in the past 24 months? So if you know Chris Lindenberger, if he's come out to train you on SOAR training, then you would definitely hit yes to this because he's our primary trainer. He does work with other trainers on this, so if you don't recognize his name, it doesn't mean that you haven't had SOAR training. But a lot of you have had SOAR training, I know. Matter of fact, let me just see if there's anybody listening and ask you to type in if you've had SOAR training. So just please type that in and say, yes, I've had SOAR training. Okay, so far we only have one, Jennifer Laurent in Texarkana. Okay, now we have plenty of others coming in. So a lot of you have had SOAR training, and if you have that representative at your agency that has SOAR training, then you would definitely hit yes for that. Any questions about that? Okay, as I said, I would like for you to ask questions as we go through this, and Dale is obliging me on that, and I appreciate that, Dale. So Dale Ferris with Beaumont has asked a question, and I'll go ahead and answer that one right now. He asked, when I get a chance, can I talk to everybody about what start date and end date to enter? And this would really depend on what your project type is. So let me go back to the start. I'm sorry, I have to take a drink. Okay, so I think the start date and end date is on 1D, but I'm going to click through to make sure. So what you're doing here,
Eric, are you sure you're in a new project application? Because Dale's project would be new.
It doesn't, but the start date and end date are in both.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, so that's what. So it really depends on whether or not you're a new or renewal project. If you're a renewal project, what you need to do is you need to look at what your start date and end date is. So it's pretty well defined. I mean, it's on your grant inventory worksheet. Your expiration dates are listed. So that tells you right there what your end date is. And those of you who have been renewal for several years, you know this by heart. So I know that, for example, the HMIS grant that Texas Homeless Network has runs from September 1st through August 31st. And that's the way it started, and that's the way it has remained. Excuse me. So if you're a renewal grant, you need to use those dates that you have and those dates that have been defined by HUD. Now, if you're new, like Dell would be, then you need to come up with a date that you'll propose to HUD. It really doesn't matter what you put in, because after the awards are announced, then the new applicants will start working with HUD to finalize a contract, and during that process, they will determine when the start date is. But I would say that you should put a start date sometime. Let's be very optimistic here, and let's say you have a start date of May the 1st. So you could have May the 1st 2016 as your start date. Actually, let's say June the 1st. So 6/1, 2016 is your start date, and then your end date would be May 31st. So, but you can pick the date if you were a new project. If you would like the September to August, like Texas Homeless Network has, you can put that in. But ultimately, it's going to depend on how soon you get the contract finalized with HUD. Any questions about that? And I don't think, for those of you who are in renewal, I don't think that this pre-populates. But if it does, just make sure it's not using last year's dates. Or it's not using the dates that would be for fiscal year 2014, because what we are doing is we are applying for fiscal year 2015 grant funds. Okay, let me go back to the questions. And I'm sorry, I'm sounding really nasally right now. It's really bad allergies here, as it probably is all over the site. Okay, 7A, permanent housing bonus. Let me just read the question first and then we'll go to it. 2 of the 3 consolidated grants would be a yes. Okay, so this is from someone who has permanent supportive housing. But the one that HUD calls the surviving grant is a no. Does it matter anyway? Okay, let's go and check that out. Without looking at it, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. And see, I'm navigating there on the left just by clicking on the link for the page. Okay, so always start with your questions. And I'll just go from number 1 down. So most of you will not say yes to this, but if you have a construction project, you really need to look at the instructions and see if you should say yes to this. We only have a few construction projects in the balance of state continuum of care. There's one in Laredo at Bethany House. Actually, that might be the only one now that I think about it. So most of you will not have a restricted covenant. Most likely, if you do have one, you are well aware that you do. So most of you will say no to that. Okay, so if the original grant was awarded as either a Samaritan bonus or permanent housing bonus project, you would put yes. Now, I wasn't aware that there were any that were in that designation, but it might be the case that the person who's asking me is. Let's see if I can find that person on here. She may not be on the call. Okay.
And Eric,
Yeah, go ahead.
can I interrupt? I'm looking, I think in the new project application, the questions in 7A are different.
Okay, well, we'll go to that next then.
Okay.
Yeah, and help me remember to look at some of the things that are different in the new project application. Okay, well, so my quick answer to this is that most of you will say no to this, to number 2, because I know for a fact that most of our projects, well, none of our projects since the balance of state CoC has been applying, none of them have been awarded money through the permanent housing bonus, or what used to be called the Samaritan bonus. If you are from a CoC in which you received funding under that designation, then you would put yes. This particular CoC has combined 3 different permanent supportive housing projects. So to be safe, I would say yes for now, but we'll check with HUD. So the person who asked that question, you put yes if you were sure that that project or those 2 projects out of the 3 were funded under a Samaritan bonus or permanent housing bonus project. And then we will check with HUD, but put yes for now. The rest of you put no. Okay, only one project will answer yes to that, and I can tell you right now that's City of Texarkana. So the only project that has been awarded funds as a result of reallocation is Texarkana, City of Texarkana. Okay. Any other questions about that? Okay, let me go back to these questions, and then we will go to the new project application too. I don't want to get to that yet, though. I want to go through these. Okay, now this is a question. Okay, 7F, the 15-year funding request. And we did talk about that some during our earlier webinar. And this person says, I still don't know how to answer that. And I have to be honest, I'm not sure I know how to answer that yet either. We actually host a forum of CoC leads from across the United States, and someone asked that very question this morning. And I'm not sure that it has been answered yet. Now, I agree the idea of applying for a 15-year grant and knowing that you're going to receive it for 15 years is great. But yeah, I agree. I'm not sure I know what it really means either. And I hate to put you on the spot about this, Mary, but have you read anything in the guidance to provide any clarity to this?
I have not.
I want to see.
I haven't read the detailed instructions for the new project applications though yet. I'm skimming through it right now to see if we can get some idea.
Okay, I'm going to look at what was written into High-Rise this morning. This is the forum that we use to communicate with other CoC leads. Let's see if anyone has come up with the answer since this morning. You can see, I believe you can see that you can't even, you can't choose more than 1 year. I'm going to go to that site and check. 7, I think she said 7F. Let me see.
Yes, 7F in the renewal.
Okay. So I'm going
to look on HUD Exchange.
Yeah, okay. And 7F is not, it's not showing up. It's probably because of the type of project. Let's see. Bear with me, guys. Okay. It's probably just not showing up because of this. Like I said, sometimes you have to fill out everything on one page before you can go to one of the other pages. I'm going to say permanent housing. Let's see if 7F shows up now. Nope, still not. Nah, we'll see if it does.
I'm looking in the detailed instructions for renewals, and 7F is the operating budget, and where it says grant term, says this field is populated based on the 1-year grant term as indicated on the funding request screen and will be read-only, which means that we need to find the funding request screen.
So we'll just go ahead and say that we're applying for everything, even though that would be highly unusual. In fact, I don't think that would even be possible. Okay, now we can see 7F. Okay, let's just say save and let's see. Okay. Are you requesting the 15-year renewal per section 4B3B? This request is only available for projects with operating cost and 1 year of funding according to the relevant section of the FY 2015 CoC program NOVA. Let's see if it says anything more about it up here. No, it says the exact same thing up here in the instructions. I will check the box and hit save and see if it says anything different. And of course it doesn't. We may have to chalk that up to something we're going to have to try to find an answer for you on. You can see that someone has asked the question. And they're asking, what is the advantage of choosing a 15-year term? So we will see if we can find that answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking in the CoC FAQs.
Okay, thanks, Mary. So Mary will look at that while we move on, but that, again, that's something we're just going to have to look up for you. I do know the answer. There is one question here. I'm not sure if anyone would have this question, but this person asked it. I'll go ahead and highlight it and tell you the answer to that. So in the past, whenever projects have been able to apply for more than 1 year of funding at a time, the annual renewal demand of that year that absorbed 1 year of that. So that I think would be, I don't think that would affect any other project if you did pick 15 years. So if there's any worry about that, I wouldn't worry about that, but we'll try to find out, get more clarification from HUD about what advantage there would be to choosing 15 years. Or disadvantage, I guess. For example, if the answer was that if you check 15 years, then you are held to operating that particular project for that period of time, then a lot of our applicants, I would think, wouldn't want to choose the 15 years because they want some flexibility in case they need it in the future. Any other?
Yeah, Eric, sorry, I'm just seeing a bunch of FAQs around the project applicants can only apply for the amount of funds that were listed in the GIW.
Right.
So I don't know how that affects a multi-year request.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was getting at earlier. That if you do choose 15 years, it's not as if, say, you get $100,000. On your grant inventory worksheet, HUD has indicated that you're up for renewal of $100,000. Well, even if you choose the 15 years and you're funded, you're only going to get that $100,000 for the next project year.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get 15 times that.
Right.
And so what I was trying to say is that don't worry if you choose 15 years. Don't worry that you'll affect other projects because obviously if you multiplied what you get on an annual renewal amount by 15, other projects possibly could be affected because depending on how you rank, you could push them below your project.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any questions about that? Any other questions? And I'm sorry I don't have the answer. It appears that, well, I'm not going to say no one has the answer, but apparently it's a question that's being asked across many CoCs and across many states. And I know it's frustrating that, you're coming to us for the answer, and then we're going to HUD for the answer, and we don't have the answer, and it doesn't seem HUD has the answer. So trust us, we share in your frustration with questions like that. Excuse me. So I had a question, actually just last night. The question was from an applicant who asked about whether or not they were monitored, or if they weren't monitored in the past year, what do they send to us as part of their application? And so what we really want is your most recent monitoring report or monitoring letter, and any follow-up documentation that, excuse me, any follow-up documentation that would go along with it. So if you received a letter from HUD that described the monitoring visit, and they had some concerns or findings, and you sent HUD more documentation to resolve either one of those, then you would send that entire thing to us, even if it was from the year before. So just send your most recent monitoring report. And then, of course, those that have not been monitored, all they need to do is send a note on their letterhead that states they have not been monitored, date it and sign it, everything like that. But I will say we are going to check with HUD about the monitoring. We have recently started receiving documentation when you are monitored. So if you are monitored, now at least one of the HUD offices is sending me the form. Any questions about that? Okay. And then the last question I have, at least the last question I have here, is should I complete a separate logs form file for each project? And let me show you what I mean by that. And I'm just going to go back to my submission list in eSnaps just so I can keep it, the account going. Every once in a while you need to save it, hit back or next just so it doesn't time you out. The system doesn't time you out. Okay, I'm going to THN site. So these LOX forms I'm going to download. And this is what you report your data from your line of credit control system draws. So when you make a draw, and it may not be you, but when someone at your agency makes a draw of funds for reimbursement of activities, they go into a system called LOX to do that. I'm sorry, I have too many things open apparently. Let me try this again. Okay. All right, well, the system is kind of locked up right now, but it will open up soon. But the LOX system is something that either you or your accountant has used in the past, and it has been used to draw down those funds for reimbursement of activities. In the past, most of you have used the telephone system, ELOC, or the LOX system through the telephone. Now, ELOX is used. So you go online and you do your draws that way. I'm sorry, my system is still not letting me open this up. I can't open either one of them up. So type in some of your other questions while we're waiting, and then once that they will open up, I can show you what I'm talking about. Hopefully most of you understand how to do that anyway. And while we're doing that, I will go to a new project. Let's see.
Yeah, while you're navigating, I will remind people that HUD does have two different kinds of guidance documents on their HUD Exchange for renewal projects and for new projects. Each, they have one called Detailed Instructions, and that kind of gives you the content, helps you figure out what content to write into your application. And then the instructional guide is the one that says, okay, here's how you actually put the information into eSnaps. So both of those are really helpful in knowing exactly what, or really helpful, maybe not exactly what HUD wants, but more of an idea of what HUD is asking in these questions and how to enter it in your application in the right way.
Yeah, I agree. The HUD guidance has gotten much, much better than it has been in the past.
Yes. So for example, in the new project application detailed instructions, for parts 3 through 7 of the application, they're different depending on what type of project you're applying for. Let's see if I can
Okay, I think I can
down.
actually open it. Technology sometimes. I don't know. Okay. So this question actually came yesterday, and this person had gone through, they use these forms, and they use these forms correctly in that they entered their draw amounts for each month, well, in their case, every quarter, um, uh, for each year. What they did differently than what we would like is they did not use these tabs. They filled out one for 2012 through 13, and then they saved it as that, 2012 through 13. Then they filled out one for 2013 through 14, and they saved that. So in effect, what they did is they saved 3 different Excel documents with each year's logs data. Now, all we have to do in that case is go in and pull data from each one of those spreadsheets into one. We'd prefer not to do that. It's much easier if we don't have to do that. So what I would ask you to do is just to enter each year's data into the corresponding tab. And yes, the 2014-15, some of you might still be in that project year, so you may not have a full year of data to report. We will factor that in to your scoring. So if your project's only been operating for 10 months, we're not going to hold it to that 12 months average. We're going to hold it to 10 months. So any questions about that? And I should say this is set up very much like the form that many of you use when you either call in or you log on to enter your reimbursement data for your CoC program funds. And that form is, it'll say VRS up in the left-hand corner. Many of you probably still use that. Okay, not seeing any questions about that, so let me go to the new project. I may have to actually create a new project. Let me see. If I do need to, I will.
I believe that you created one for our webinar last week,
Yeah, I
didn't you?
thought I
Or 2
did.
weeks ago?
This is the
Sample
advantage.
application.
Right. Yeah, this is the advantage of using these filters up here. It really helps. And of course, there we go, new project. So I was going to say the advantage of using this filters, it makes it easier to find what you're looking for, but then of course I'm having trouble finding what I'm looking for. Over the years, I've created a lot of Sampleville projects. Okay, so remind me again what number we were going to look at that would have been different in the new project application. I'm sorry, Mary, I'm asking you to remind me if you can remember.
Yes, I believe it was 7F, but after looking through, I thought the person was asking because they were applying for a new permanent housing bonus, but I think you actually answered it right. It was the renewal application where that one question was about permanent housing bonus. So 7F in this one, the new project application, has some details about when you'll start.
Okay. And you can see, actually 7A, they're asking whether or not it's feasible for you to start by September 30th, 2017, which I think most of you, if you are applying, would say yes. Then they ask if you're reallocating.
And just a reminder that depending on whether someone picks a new project as PSH, RRH, SSO for coordinated access, or HMIS, which no one should be choosing, the screens will be different. So for parts 3 through 7 of the new application, the questions are different depending on the type of new project you're applying for. So the PSH questions are different from the RRH questions, and those are both different from the SSO questions for parts 3 through 7.
That's a good point. Let me go back there, and then I'll come back to this. So what Mary was talking about is section 3. And so this is where you start to identify what type of project you're applying for. I'm not sure that there shouldn't be anyone applying for HMIS. I'm not sure that there's anyone applying for a supportive service only for coordinated entry. If there is someone on the line that's doing that, type in and say you are doing that so we can look at that. Otherwise, we'll just focus on the component type, permanent housing. Okay, I'm assuming that there will be no new projects other than those that are permanent housing. And under permanent housing, that's the umbrella permanent housing. Under that umbrella are permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. So this is already set for permanent housing. So we'll hit save and next. And then we'll go back to 7. Because I don't think anything here. Yeah, I don't think there's anything that will really change. Oh yeah, I think there were some questions about this. Housing first. So obviously we would encourage you to use housing first, and we want people to move quickly into permanent housing. Whenever you go through, just go through and make sure that participants are not screened out for the following items. If you do screen them out for any of the following items, then you will not hit check. You will not check it. Let's see. And then same with this, you go through and you identify the items that you would not terminate someone from the program for. This is HUD's way of determining whether or not you were housing first. Okay. Let me go ahead and get to 7. So here on your funding request, I think all of the new projects, if there are any new projects, they will be through the permanent housing bonus. But you may be choosing to reallocate. If you are, let me just say, if you're choosing to reallocate funds and create a new project that way, please let us know as soon as possible so we can work with you on that. But I think that any of the applicants that are interested in new projects are doing it through the permanent housing bonus. Now, again, we get to select the grant term. Let's see what it says in the instructions. I'm assuming that they have nearly the same level of explanation for this as they did for the other. Okay. So this will determine how to calculate the total funding. So I think in this case, this might actually run counter to what I said about the renewal applicant. Excuse me. So let's see. We're going to test this out. Let's say we just select 1 year. And say we're going to do rental assistance and supportive services. We're going to do save and next. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say that we have, let's say we have 5 units, 2-bedroom units each. And we're going to be tenant-based rental assistance. So we can provide units anywhere in the geographic area that I choose. So out of my 5 households I'm serving, they could all be in 5 different apartment complexes, for example. And I'm going to do this, let's just say, we'll pick a place. Say we're going to do it in B County. So you choose that, then you choose the number of units, and the system calculates it up, and it says that the fair market rent for that area for a 2-bedroom home is $662, and for 12 months, that is the cost. So I'm going to do save and back. So what I'm going to do is test what it will show if I click, say, 5 years instead of 1. And I do see there is a question has come up, and I will answer that in a second. Okay, so now let's see if things change. So what I'm trying to determine is whether or not the grant term, and it looks like it has changed it. I'm trying to determine whether or not it's changed. Sorry, went too fast. Let me view this. So you remember before, 1 year was around 39,000. So yes, if you choose more than 1 year, it will multiply by that number of years. It will multiply your funding request by the number of years you choose. So keep that in mind if you are applying for a new bonus project, and keep in mind what that means. It may look good to apply for 10 years, but keep in mind that you're obligated to that, and you have to come up with a match for that. And if you're going to try to get those leverage points, you have to come up with the leverage for that. So keep all that in mind whenever you're choosing how many years you want to apply for. Any questions about that in particular? About that aspect of the application of new applications? Okay. Okay. Let me save and back to list. So we have a question that was written in, and the question is about screening folks out. So let me go back to 3A, project detail. I'm sorry, that's not where that was. I think it might have been 3B. Yes, 3B. I'm sorry, 3B. Okay, so the question is, can we screen an applicant out for being a perpetrator of family violence? For example, if they have a conviction. So what I would say I mean, this, if you do that, if you do that, my first inclination is to say don't check that. But if you do have a protective order, so like if there's a conviction with a protective order, then you still would check that. I think it would depend on really your specific case. Since you say there is a conviction, I'm assuming that because that person was convicted, there are some type of restrictions on their being around the abused. And if that's the case, then you could still check that box. Does that answer your question? You can type in your answer if you want, or I can unmute you. Okay, well, while she, yes, okay, thank you. So that answers her question. So any other questions as we're going through this? I have run out of the questions that I've received over the past few days, and those were the ones that I copy and pasted into that Word document. Please ask them now, because I may not be here to answer, or at least try to answer later. Okay, here we go. Okay, the question is about the SOAR training date. Let me pull this to where I can, this is a long question, so I have to pull this out to see if I can answer this. Okay, okay, what do you do if you do not have any last SOAR training date? If this field is left empty, I get a please complete instructions at the end of the forms. Okay, well, I mean, if you haven't received training, SOAR training, then you definitely need to say that you haven't. Let's see what you have to do if you say you haven't. Because I understand that there is an explanation that you have to give. Remember, if you say yes to 6, then it will ask you, the system will ask you whether or not you've been provided SOAR training. Okay. Well, that's not really, the question's not really worded very well. It says, will project applicants have access to SSI, SSDI technical assistance provided by the applicant, a subrecipient, or partner agency? And we would say yes, as the agency that does provide that assistance. But then the question that follows says, indicate the last SOAR training date for the staff person providing this technical assistance. You know, and I think this is a question that HUD asks of COCs as they generally think of at continuums of care. I think this question is asked with the assumption that a continuum of care covers one community. In our case, the last SOAR training may have been a few months ago, but it was in another city. So the question doesn't work out so well for the balance of state. So it has not been provided in Beaumont, which is where the person is who asked the question. Let's see if we've just put NA. I'm sure that's not going to work, but we'll see. Okay, yes, that does not work. You know what? We're going to have to ask HUD about that. we're going to have to put together a AAQ or submit a question to the help desk, because I believe that this question is asked with an incorrect assumption in mind. Is that the way you read it, Mary or Caitlin? I hate to put you guys on the spot.
I'm sorry, I'm still researching the differences between
Okay.
PSH and RRH
Okay,
via this app, so I wasn't listening to the SOAR.
No, that's okay. You know what? We have to follow up either way. Now, I will say the person who asked the question follows up, well, maybe we just enter the date. Enter the date of the SOAR training that THN did provide last. And we could do that. I'm sure that this is asking, when is the last date that you were provided, or your community was provided this training? But that's something we could do. Well, if we do that, that'll have to be across the board. So if we say for all applicants, indicate the last date that we provided SOAR training, whether it was in Texarkana or wherever, then we'll make sure you all have that date. But let us ask the question first and see if we can get some clarity. Okay. And actually, someone else says that they think the SOAR question does refer to our staff, and that we would use the last date. Last date that we provided that. And if that's the case, if we do choose to do that, we will make sure that you have that date. And that will be an easy way to handle it. Tell you what, I'll call our regional office so I can get a quick answer on this, or at least try to get a quick answer on this, and give you all the answer to that question, this particular question, later today before I leave. Okay, let me jump back up. There's been some other questions here. So yes, there's a question about the due date. So let's go to the RFP. The due date was originally the deadline to get proposal packages to us at Texas Homeless Network was originally October 16th. That's correct. We did change that a few days later to October 20th. So that is the due date now. So if you've been working with the idea that the due date was the 16th, then good news, it's actually the 20th. So that is the due date. Okay, that was a question that came in. Hopefully that's cleared up. I do have a question asking if I actually am able to talk to the people in the regional offices, and believe it or not, yes, I am. I talk regularly to the folks in the Fort Worth office, San Antonio office, and the Houston office. And I will not comment on the on how successful I am in finding answers in each one of those offices, but I will dig until I find some answer that can help you out. Okay. Yeah, and the person who asked the question about the SOAR training does make a good point. And it seems like a tedious thing, but he's right. If you don't have a date in here, then you can't submit the form. So we do have to have a date. If we're going to choose yes to 6A has to have some date in it. So we will make sure to get you some date if some kind of alternative cannot be provided by HUD. And let's not assume that they will provide that alternative. So I'm thinking more and more that we probably will have to go with that date of our last training. Okay, a lot of questions coming in here. Okay, good question again. Dell, you're asking a lot of questions. I like that. So, yes, October 20th is when you submit your package to us. Now, when you do that, we'll get all of them in, then we'll start looking at them. And what we're going to do is split them up among our staff here. And what we're going to be looking in your applications for are just the bare essentials. We're going to make sure that you're meeting that HUD threshold. So we're going to make sure that you're applying for something that's appropriate to apply for. We're going to make sure that you have the match documentation required for the grant that you have applied for in the correct amount. So those are the things we're looking for. Once we look at those and we check all the boxes and we say, this application has met threshold, then we'll get back with you and tell you that they have met threshold. If we have anything that needs corrections that we've noticed, then we will send that back to you, send your application package back to you, and indicate what corrections you need to make. Because of all this, because of this process, we do not want you to submit your application in eSnaps. We want you to go into eSnaps, and let me show you what we want you to do. Once you finish everything, there are no red messages saying that you still need to do something. Once you're to that point where you could hit submit, we don't want you to hit submit. We want you to export to PDF and leave all these boxes checked so we see everything. And then save this as, say, give it a pretty descriptive name so it's easy for us to find. In this case, I'll say Sampleville new project. And I always like putting the project here. It just makes it easier for me to remember. So save it like that. Save it into your file. Keep a file folder that just has all of your project application documents. And then once you have everything you need, my best advice is to compress that file folder and send that to us as one folder, if you're able to do that. But you send that to us via email to txboscoc@thn.org. By doing that, that allows you to later go back into eSnaps and make changes if you need to make changes. Now, I don't want anyone to really get stressed out if they accidentally hit submit. If they're at a point where they can't hit submit and they do, and then they realize, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that, it's not the end of the world. We'll just go in on our end and we'll resubmit it back to you or return it to you. The reason we don't want you to do that, the reason we don't want you to hit submit is because that process can take 1 or 2 days. So if you hit submit, it's very likely you will not be able to get back into your eSnaps application right away to make any corrections we may have asked you to make. So the key is don't hit submit, just export it. Okay. Let's see. Okay, this is from Denton. Let me go back here. So someone in Denton asked about the certificate of consistency. And okay, so the question is, do you need one from each of the projects or one for all 3 projects? And excuse me. And you can do it either way. I think the easiest way to do it, if you can, is go in and get all of the projects together in your community. So in Denton, you have 3 projects, for example. So what you do is you all talk about doing your certificate of consistency together. What you want to do, anytime you ask your local jurisdiction to sign a certificate of consistency, is first identify all the projects that should have one. And for you, it would be the CoC new projects or renewal projects. And then get descriptions for each one of those projects. So what you're going to want to do is go into, I believe it's 1C. No, not 1C, I'm sorry. It's 3B. So go into 3B. Hopefully you have filled this out already. And what I've done in the past is just simply copied what's in number 1 and pasted it into a Word document. And for each one of the projects I'm asking a official to sign off on, I include a description. So in this case, projects, in Denton's case, projects 1, 2, and 3 would have a description on a sheet or a sheets that are attached to that certificate of consistency form, because the certifying official will want to read or should want to read about the project, and they may even ask you for more information about the project. And if they do, I would encourage you to give them that information so they can complete that. Let me see if I can find a sample for everyone so it's clear about what I'm saying here. You can do that. You can do it individually as well. You can say if your Salvation Army in Galveston, if you want to fill out one certificate of consistency just for your agency and go to, I think in Galveston, the mayor has signed it in the past, and just have the mayor sign your certificate of consistency separate, you can do that. Okay, I'm going to probably look at someone's from the past here, and it'll probably be one from Galveston, I'm thinking. Let's see. What you guys don't see is everything's opening up on my other screen. So let's see. You can see these folks have attached their match. That's always good. Trying to find their certificate of consistency. Sorry, I hope I'm not making you dizzy. Okay, it's not actually on that one. Oh, okay, it must be this. If you can label your file as clearly as possible, it helps us to find things. Okay. Well, I'm not doing a very good job finding you a sample here. I'm sorry. Well, it's not that one either. Well, I'll send you a sample. I will show you what the certificate of consistency looks like, just the form. Actually, I'll just show you what it looked like last year. So you can see whenever we get the certificates from you, we combine them all before we send them to HUD. And this is one that's filled out for one applicant. Actually, no. This one is filled out for Mid-Coast Family Services, and you can see all the project names are listed. Those are 3 different projects. So they put this together, and then presumably they had descriptions of the projects before they took it to Jared Mayfield for signature. And Mr. Mayfield looked at everything and then agreed to sign it and certify. Here's another one that they have listed for multiple projects. And see, here they have the descriptions. This is from Homeless Issues Partnerships in Corpus Christi. And so they actually have the budget and everything. That's a good idea. Your certifying official may ask for that detail. So that's the kind of thing that you send to your certifying official and ask them before you ask them to sign the certificate. Now we do that. Texas Homeless Network does that. We send ours to the state, and then we also send a request to the state on behalf of one other agency that is not covered by a certifying jurisdiction, and that would be Mount Pleasant. So we have reached out to the folks at the state that do that already. If anyone needs help with that, please let us know. So there's a question from, and actually, Mary, I might need your help answering this. This is a question from a new applicant, because the only reason I might need help answering this is I'm not sure exactly where we landed on this. So if they're a new project, do they turn in both the application form that we asked them to fill out and the eSnaps PDF, or just one of those?
You know, I think you and I have discussed some options on this. What we were hoping is that the new project application form that we have would serve as a template so people could fill it in and then copy and paste into eSnaps, in which case then they wouldn't necessarily have to turn in our application. They could only turn in the eSnaps one.
That's right.
Then we added some, we might keep some questions in the new project application. I'm sorry, guys. We are just now finalizing with one of our consultants our new project application in paper form, and she did have some questions in there from last year that we might keep in, and we have not finalized that decision, Eric, I think, unless you want to decide right now.
Well, you know, I think those that are on the call, they probably want to know right now, especially since I'm leaving and we'll be out all next week. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, just turn in your eSnaps PDF. The extra questions that we had on the new form, they're important, but at this late date, I think what we needed to do is just get you to turn in your eSnaps PDF.
Sounds good.
Okay. So the question is, we have a new question here from, I think, Laredo. Should last year's annual performance report be utilized since the new annual performance report information isn't due until the end of the year? Yes. If you're, and I'm assuming you're asking that because you're trying to calculate what your score would be. Or no, actually, there are questions on the application that probably relate to that. Your annual performance report, you're going to use the most recent one when you're determining what your score is through our competition. But let me make sure that you do the same whenever you are submitting your project application. Let's look at what HUD says here. And performance measures will probably be your best place to look. Okay. All right, I'm not seeing anything about APR there. What I'm looking for is the page that they used to have that measured the HMIS data quality. Okay, I'm not seeing that. So my suggestion is that you use the most recent annual performance report. Sometimes, or in the past, actually HUD has defined the date range in which applicants would use their annual performance report. So, for example, in the past, they might have said from June 1st, 2014 through May 31st, 2015, those that, if you have an APR within that date, then you use that APR. We'll look to see if they have that designation this year, but my advice is to use the most recent APR if there are sections that you need to answer using the APR. Okay, I'm just going to look through a few more pages here to see if I can find that section that I was talking about. Okay, I'm not finding that section, but we will look to see if there's a date. Otherwise, use your most recent APR when you're answering questions. Anything about the performance report, use that. I have a question from someone who is asking about the certificate of consistency. Yes, if the person is still in that place, and if they're still the official, the certifying official that you have used in the past, I would use them again because they're probably the appropriate person, or at least one of the appropriate people, and hopefully they remember that they helped you out with this last year and probably the year before and the year before that in a lot of cases. So it'll just make the process faster. You won't have to explain to the new person what this is. They'll understand what it is. Okay, so there have been questions about where to attach things. So, for example, your certificate of consistency. And so the place where we would like you to attach your certificate of consistency, and what we mainly want you to do is make sure you send it in as part of your proposal packet. But if you want to attach it in eSnaps, which I think is a good idea, you do it in your applicant profile. So let me go back to submissions list and I'll show you where that is. The applicant profile includes a lot of space for people to attach forms. And I think it's a good idea to do it because if something happened and you lost your electronic forms in your office, or even your hard copy forms, if you have it saved in eSnaps, it'll be there when you go back. Assuming that eSnaps doesn't crash, but I don't want to go to that apocalyptic scenario there. Or maybe that wouldn't be. Maybe that would be a wonderful thing to happen. I'm not sure. Depends on what you're feeling about eSnaps right now. And yeah, if you emailed the form that you used, you do email that as part of your project application, and that's perfect if you do that. I'm going to answer a few of the other questions that have come up, if I can, while this pops up. Oh yeah, and also with the match letters.
This is Mary.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that the certification of consistency might be attached within the application itself.
Oh, okay.
In Part 8, attachments.
Okay, well, so let me show you this, everyone, first. Here is certificate of consistency in your applicant profile. So it's in there. But let me go back to your project applicants. I'll go to your submission folder and see what Mary's talking about. I do seem to remember there is a page that allows for a lot of attachments. And I was thinking it was in the applicant profile, but I think you're right. I think it's in the submission folder. But when you're sending in your packet, you just send those documents to us. Let me say this. If you attach something in eSnaps, so say we can't attach something in the submissions folder, and you attach your match letters. If you attach that in eSnaps and then you just export the PDF of eSnaps, it's not going to have that letter. It's just going to have, it may indicate that you have attached a letter to eSnaps, but it's not going to download that letter, or at least it has not in the past. So you'll still need to send the letter to us as part of your packet. All right, let me open this. Okay, it must be towards the back. Yeah, here it is, attachments. So you can put other attachments here if you want. And I think the section before might be, no, never mind. Yeah, you can put your other attachments here under 8A. So does everyone understand about whether you put something in here or not? You still need to send it to us. Let me show you a sample. Just pull something from the desktop. I just want you to I want to show you what happens whenever you export it to PDF. Okay, you can see it's in there, and if you want to look at it, you can. That way, if it's in the future you need to take a look at it, you can. And that is our board member elections form. So if you guys have anyone in mind that you want to nominate for our CoC board, please do so soon. But okay, so we have uploaded it. Now we're going to go to the summary and we're going to see what happens when we export it. Okay, and while that's doing that, okay, there's another question about APRs that I'll answer in just 1 second. It's still downloading. So the question is, okay, here it is actually. I don't think it attaches it to the end, but let's see. Nope. And I'm not even sure it shows that it is attached, but let's see if it does. Yes, it shows that it's attached, but that's all it shows. So whenever you submit your proposal packet, you'll submit this form as your application, and then you'll submit the other required documents, whether they're attached to this form or not, in eSnaps. Hopefully that answers the question. Okay, so there's a question about APRs. Our APRs are due to HUD by October 30th, so of course they're not done. So she says she planned on using last year's APRs, and will that work? And yes, that will work because you won't have an APR to use other than that. And that's all we can use when we're running the scoring. We can only use the most recent annual performance report if you are a renewal applicant. And then the last question I have so far. Oh, yes, you can only attach 3 documents in 8A, but here's what I would do. for all of your match letters. Let's pretend these are all your match letters. Highlight them all, right click, and compress them all into one thing. And then upload that. Upload your zipped file. That's the easiest way to do it. Now again, your attachments, that's not required. You don't have to do that, but if you want to, you can upload. Let's say I'm uploading my match file. And you can upload it. Well, let's make this easy. Just put it somewhere else. But you don't have to do that, just for your convenience. But you do have to send it in. And then it'll all be in there. So you can do that. You can zip it if you want. Okay. Any other questions? And again, that's a good way to save it. If you save it like that, then it's just going to be easier. Or a lot of times with the match letters, because they contain original signatures, someone will put them all in their scanner at once. Say there's 10 match letters. They'll scan them all at once as one document, one scanned copy. And so people do that as well. Okay, anything else? Good questions. I'm hoping this is helping. Is anyone stuck on any one place that we might be able to help with? All right, I'm not getting anyone writing in, so I'm assuming we're good. Okay, there's actually a question came in. Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm glad it was helpful. And of course, we will help you. And let me just say that I will be out, but I will be looking on my phone, so please don't think I'm totally abandoning you. And there are some questions that I can actually answer real quick from my phone. And if that's the case, I'll do that. As long as I have internet access, I'll be pretty deep in the woods in Arkansas at a wedding. So they may not have internet access. We'll see. But I will answer you if I can. And of course, Mary and Caitlin or whoever here will do their best to answer you in my absence. And this is recording, and it will be available today if you're going to want to. Well, this file is too big for this, but this must be an extra large file. Most zips it will take. So, I mean, it has to be 5 megabytes or smaller. And I think most of yours would be. But yes, I am recording this. If you want to listen to this later, I would encourage you to fast forward through the parts that don't mean anything to you, or through me clearing my throat, and get to the parts that are most pertinent to you. Any other questions? We have about 5 minutes. All right, well, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say if you need to leave, go ahead and leave. I will stay on for the extra 5 minutes, and thanks for joining us. I'm going to turn off the recording now. Thank you all. Thanks for the questions. Wow, that's good news. I love it when I hear that applicants are about ready to submit. So, good job.